Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video is going to be the start of a new series on my channel as I dig deeper into the D&D or Dungeons and Dragons Rules Cyclopedia. Uh, this originally came out from TSR in 1991. I have that volume here. It is a one volume set that basically takes all of the rules that originated with D&D Holmes Edition. It includes the Moldvay Cook, then the Metzner, as well as from other sources following the Dungeons and Dragons basic or BX line of of editions of Dungeons and Dragons. So it does not include anything from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons first or second edition, and so it really does hold to the D&D basic sets, going all the way through. It also includes a fairly large chapter detailing the world. So this is set in the world setting of Mystara, and both the known world and the hollow world, and there are box sets for that world setting that you can also get, as well as the long series of gazetteers that are also out there. So there is a ton of supplemental materials that you can also get for use with Dungeons and Dragons Rules Cyclopedia. Now, I am of the camp, let's say, of those that think that when you're running a rule system and it has a dedicated setting for that rule system, that you honestly need to pair those two up, because they do work hand in hand with each other to capture the true essence of both the rule system and the world lore, and they seamlessly meld together. And so I'm going to just switch views here very quickly, just to show off the. So this is the volume. It's a one volume set, and we go here. Whether you're a player or dungeon master, the Dungeons and Dragons Rules Cyclopedia is now a comprehensive source book you need for the original fantasy role-playing game. All the rules from D&D box set series, including basic, expert, companion, and masters, guidelines to develop the play characters from levels 1 through 36, comprehensive lists of weaponry and equipment, expansion rules including optional skills and talents, an overview of the known world and the hollow world game settings, the official D&D campaign world, rules to convert D&D games and characters into a D&D second edition game, statistics, and back again. Provides all of the original monsters from the earliest box set. So as I said, it's a compilation of all of the original D&D BX sets, going from Holmes through Metzner, and then some outside sources also come into it, and so really looking forward to digging into this along with you. Now, I've played D&D basic and basic and expert. I've played. I started off the Holmes edition was the first edition I briefly played before we moved on to AD&D first edition. The Moldvay Cook box set was the first box set that I had purchased, the first actual Dungeons and Dragons purchase I made myself. And the rest I was always playing with my two dungeon masters, which had advanced D&D at the time. I eventually ended up getting the advanced D&D books as well for my own collection, because from time to time I was also running AD&D back in the early to mid 80s. I also ran quite a number of other games as well, as did my other two dungeon masters. So we kind of mixed up a lot along the way. So let's get right into the PDF, and I will be going through. I'm just going to focus on chapter 1 today and briefly go through it. I'm not going to go word by word through it. Many of you, especially those that are on my channel, that have been on my channel for quite some time, I'm sure that you have seen my videos in the past going through the various different editions of Dungeons and Dragons Basic and then later on AD&D First Edition and Second Edition. Eventually we'll get around to Third Edition, which I do have, and I also have Fourth. I can cover that a little bit as well, but let's start diving right into this. So let me just make sure, and for some reason I'm not sure if we are looking at it. Yes, we are. Sorry, I had a little glitch on my side here. So let's get right into the rules cyclopedia. I have some other windows opened up. I'll be ignoring those for now. So here we go, and I will expand this so you can see. So I'm going to skip over the introduction. I'm going to deal just with the character creation section and just chapter 1, going through this. And again, I'm going to skim it pretty quickly. Excuse me. But there is a lot in this 1-volume set, and it goes through, or book, I should say. It goes through at least 302 pages. Here are the credits. Excuse me. Let me just get another sip of water. So the compilation and development was by Aaron Alston. The editorial coordinator was Stephen Shend. Sorry if I mispronounce anything here. The project coordinator was Bruce Hurd. And we go on. Peggy Cooper was the art director. Jeff Easley was the book cover. The back cover art was by Robin Robb. Interior by Terry Dykstra. Cartography by Dennis Kolf and Frey Graphics. Graphic design by Stephanie Tabbitt and Robin Robb. Typography by Angelica Lokatz and Tracy Zameng. And finally, the production was by Sarah Fegestad. All right, and then all of the acknowledgments and everything, which you have virtually everybody associated with TSR back in the day or prior to certainly the early 1990s. So everyone is mentioned in here, basically. So the introduction, like I said, I'm going to skip over these kinds of things, and we're going to go right into character creation. All right, and I'm not going to delve too much into this. There is an introduction here of, the steps. So you have a step-by-step sequence that you can follow here. And this is very, very helpful for both new players and new dungeon masters as well. So steps to creating a character: roll for the ability scores, choose a character class. Oftentimes you're rolling the ability scores, and then if you're rolling in order and keeping them that way, that will oftentimes inform what character class you might potentially be considering those rolls. Other ways of doing it is to roll, 3d6 and assign them as you wish. That way you can more likely get the character class you're looking for. And then there are other dice mechanics for rolling for attribute scores that are more optional rules. So continuing on. So you're going to choose your character class, adjust your ability scores, roll for your hit points, roll for money, buy equipment, determine other numbers and rolls, note adjustments for ability scores, choose character alignment, select a name, personality, and background, determine character height and weight, and then you're going to earn experience. All right. So, rolling the ability scores many of the attributes that make up a character. For instance, his physical might and his level of intelligence are represented by numbers in the game. 6 of these are the characteristics, and I'm again not going to go into the very, very basic rules here. Prime requisites: each character class requires prowess in one of the abilities. In other words, each class has an ability that is the utmost importance to the class. For examples, fighters' most important ability is strength, and the cleric's is wisdom. Magic users is intelligence, and a thief is dexterity. And then there were subclasses and even race as class, which you're going to see a little bit in a minute or two. So choosing a character class, all right, and here are your selections of character class. And they show you here on this chart whether that's the prime and then other requirements, right? So a cleric is a prime wizard, wisdom, sorry, prime wisdom, and then other requirements, there are none. We have the fighter, the prime is strength, none. Magic user, the prime is intelligence, and none. Thief, the dexterity is the prime, and there is no other requirements. For a dwarf need as prime is strength, and the constitution requirement is a 9. An elf has 2 primes, strength and intelligence. That's because elves are basically fighter magic users, but they have an intelligence minimum requirement of 9. Halflings are primes are both strength and dexterity. They're basically fighter thieves, a combination, and they require a 9 in both dexterity and constitution. A druid, which comes a little bit later on, starts at prime is a wisdom, neutral alignment. They must obtain 9th level as a cleric. So they do not start off as a druid. You have to be a cleric from levels 1 through 8, and then at 9 they can convert over to after they've reached 9th level of cleric, then they can become a druid. And then a mystic is both strength and dexterity. They require a wisdom and dexterity of both 13, so very, very high requirements there. Demi-human characters, dwarf, elf, and halfling, should be a little less common. These races are supposed to be somewhat reclusive and mysterious. And that's pretty much the tone of D&D, especially early on D&D or old school D&D, was that these were very human-centric worlds, whether you're dealing with the known world of Dungeons and Dragons basics sets, or you're dealing with even the world of Greyhawk, very, very human-centric worlds, and demi-humans tend to be, in any particular region, 10% or less of the overall population, unless you go to spaces that were, places that were specifically like dwarven kingdoms or elven kingdoms, or halfling shires, or gnomish hill lands and whatnot. But for the most part, where you have a very cosmopolitan area, the demi-humans are typically less than, I'd say less than overall 20% of the population. And then they're broken down amongst themselves, even smaller than 20% in those components. But anyway, rolling for your hit points. So, this is pre-start first level at maximum hit points, right? So definitely a culture shock for modern players, or even later on players, those that started playing in perhaps third edition and beyond. So just the mid 1990s going forward, I think by that point most dungeon masters were allowing their players to have their characters start off with maximum hit points at first level. But here we go, character classes and their hit die type. Clerics D6, fighters D8, not D10. It goes to D10 with AD&D. Magic users D4, thieves D4. That will go to D6 in AD&D. Dwarves, elves, halflings, all are at dwarves are at a D8, same as fighters. Elves are a D6, kind of a combination between a fighter and a magic user. All right, and halflings are a D6, which is a combination of thief and fighter. So that's why they split those differences there. Druid has an asterisk because they are clerics all the way up from 1 through 9. So this actually forces all druids to be humans as well. That's a big difference between what you start ending up with the separation of class and race in AD&D. And then a mystic is a D6. And I'll spend more time with mystics a little bit later on to try to put into context how that character class is fairly unique. So going on, rolling for money and buying equipment, I'm not going to spend very much time with that. Armor class, again, we have no armor is an AC of 9. Leather armor is a 7. Scale is a 6. Chain is a 5. Banded is a 4. Plate mail is a 3. A suit of armor, which is like a full plate, is a 2. A shield, you will subtract 1 to the AC. So this is using descending armor class as well. They go into the rules of how to make attack rolls, and many of you should be familiar. You're rolling a d20, but then you're using a combat matrix for this. In other words, you have to look at the chart to see how how they're going to hit. Now, you're going to have attack rolls and tables versus THAC0. I know a lot of people will, a lot of modern players have been said, oh, THAC0 is very confusing or complex or whatever. It really isn't once you get, the simple math behind it. And character sheets oftentimes have the matrix that you would fill out along, and you wouldn't have to worry about the changes for at least a couple of levels once you move from one combat matrix band to another. And then you'll see, all right, my range has now changed, and now my THAC0 has changed as well. So it's not as onerous a mathematical complication, calculation as many might lead you to believe. Then we get into, and they go into all of the, THAC0, by the way, means to hit armor class 0. So you're doing all of your calculations based on what that would be. And here is an example of that, right? So the AC is up on top, and so here is a 0, and the attack roll, you would need a 19 to hit 0. In most cases, that's what most of the character classes are. You might have some that are a little bit lower, but a 20 always hits anyway. But there are some that will remain at 20 for that. But for most part, a 19 will hit AC 0, and that's what you're working with. Here we have the bonuses and penalties for ability scores. And so as you can see, the ability score, the average is a 9 through 12, and so there is no adjustment. You'll go as low as a 3 is the lowest that you can roll, and so that would give you a -3 penalty, and an 18 is the highest that you can roll, and that will give you a +3. So going here, strength, so abilities and the adjustment tables. So strength, enhances your attack rolls, both melee weapons and unarmed combat, damage rolls, melee and thrown weapons, and opening doors, right? So a strength bonus of a +1 actually gives you a +1 to hit with melee weapons and unarmed combat, and a +1 to damage with melee and thrown weapons. Intelligence increases your languages and general skills, which is optional. I would highly recommend using them. Wisdom is your saving throws versus spells. Dexterity is your attack for thrown and missile weapons and your armor class. Constitution is your hit points per experience level. And finally, charisma is your reaction rolls for NPCs. And we have the various tables for each of the six attributes or attributes. Moving on, alignment and behavior. So alignment is simplified in the rules cyclopedia. It's simplified in D&D Basic. All right, so or BX, I should say. So you have lawful characters, you have chaotic characters, you have neutral characters. Chaotic doesn't necessarily mean evil. It just means in the absence of law and order kind of thing. You're kind of, you could be chaotic and be very free spirited and whatnot. It doesn't actually mean that your character is a malevolent force in the world. Just as lawful doesn't necessarily mean that you are lawful good. All right. I mean, you will protect, groups regardless of danger. The character will not run away unless the Hope group does, or otherwise. Chaotic characters might fight the monsters or might run away immediately. Chaotics are always unpredictable. They may not even care what happened to the rest of the party, so very self-centered kind of thing. Neutral characters will fight to protect the group as long as it is reasonably safe to do so. If the danger is too great, the character will try to save himself, even at the expense of the rest of the party. All right, I think that kind of leans more towards chaotic neutral, but fine, that's a true neutral there. There are alignment languages, so you can speak within your alignment group with a almost like a secret language that their alignments will understand. It becomes useful when you're dealing with non-player characters, monsters, creatures that might share the same alignment as you, and so you can converse with them. I'm not a big fan of alignment languages. I think it's kind of weird that they do exist, and I don't rely on them at all when I'm running D&D Basic. Determining your character's height and weight. This is really useful because it's something that most most other systems really doesn't get into. They let you just kind of pick something. So I like, you could still pick this, but it makes sense to kind of match things up a little bit. Or I'd say you can go, one up or one down if you want to have like an exceptionally large or short or whatever. But it's meant to be paired, right? So let's say you have a 5'10" human character. Well, their weight should be about 1,650 coins. If a female, 1,500 coins, and 2,000 coins actually weighs about 200 pounds. So there's a conversion system that is in here, and so they go into this. So you can convert it to a weight table that makes a little bit more sense for you. But it's just interesting to put it into this context, right? So because the characters are going to be expressing things in coin weight and not necessarily pounds or kilos or anything like that. Moving on, we go to experience points charts and the prime requisite and experience points. So these are the modifiers, right? So if a cleric has a 16 to 18, it's going to be plus 10% experience points. A wisdom of 13 to 15 of 5%. A 6 to 8 is a minus 10%, and a 3 to 5 is a minus 20%. So each of the character classes, and remember race as class for demi-humans, and they will have pluses or minuses based on their prime requisite as it impacts experience points. And then we'll get into character class, the actual classes, and get into detail with the classes. But this is pretty much an overview of that step-by-step process that you would make for character creation. It's really designed for you to to make your attribute rolls and let that guide what kind of a character class that you'd actually be entitled to play based on it. You notice that most of them did not have a requirement of a certain attribute score, and even if they did, they were a 9. Only in the Mystics case were there 2 13s that are required. There were 2 9s required for halflings. So it's a system that's meant, if you're running it with those rules like 3d6 down the line, kind of rule fidelity, then what it does is it forces the player to play a character class that might not be optimal. All right, so and there's a certain aspect of role playing that comes from playing a suboptimal character. So you really shouldn't shy away from playing a player character that is not just hand-picked down the line. So these are the ability scores that I'm going to place them as I wish, and then this is the character class I'm really gearing myself up to playing. And I think that there's a certain amount of intrigue, let's say, of let's just see what it gives me, and what will best fit the attribute scores that I rolled, and then I have to work with what I got. And I've had a lot of fun playing characters like that, where I just kind of randomly generated them, and what I ended up with is what I ended up with, and then I played them out. Sometimes they last for a long, long time, and other times they die miserably very quickly. So it's kind of an opportunity, I think, for real role playing. Not that anything else is not real. I'm just saying it's a challenge. Let's put it that way. It's a challenging way of playing Dungeons and Dragons, or any other tabletop role playing game, when you don't have as much control over the character that you're going to end up playing. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this first installment of the Rules Cyclopedia. Like I said, the next one I will be going into greater detail now with the character classes and describing the especially the class as race, so that you can hopefully understand why class as race is really designed and remains with the Dungeons and Dragons BX series of box sets, and they stay true to that even through 1991. So this is not a compilation and then with enhancements put to it, other than a couple of optional rules, but none of those optional rules went by changing class's race or race's class, I should say, and none of them seem to change the other things like the like prestige classes. Really, like the druid is a prestige class in this. You have to go through one class pretty high up before you can get to the other ones. But we'll see. We'll see what classes they detail with this in the very next video. So you all have a great one. I hope you enjoyed this. Enjoy the remainder of your weekend. As always, I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen or at a convention sometime soon. Please remember to subscribe and like the video, and share it out there. Leave your comments. I'm really most excited about getting comments that I can then interact with you. Sometimes take your suggestions, especially for future videos. And as always, have a great rest of your evening. Take care.